yeah, I guess real quick for introductions here, got Dr. Derek Adams up from Permian Energy Development Lab, or PEDAL. Derek's closely involved in the applied testing and validation of produced water and energy technologies, helping to bridge the gap between lab scale research and real world field deployment. PEDAL plays a critical role in providing independent pilot scale testing environments that allow technologies to be evaluated under conditions that more closely reflect operational reality. Definitely need more of that. So today, Derek's going to talk about, give an update on PEDAL's capabilities and ongoing work. So I'll shut up for now, and let's please welcome Derek, Dr. Derek Adams. If you want to use the clicker or...
Okay. Good afternoon. Everybody's ready to just kind of taper on down after lunch. That's great. So yeah, I'm Derek Adams with PEDAL. We are a nonprofit R&D organization focused on really bringing innovation in the energy space back to the Permian Basin. So we work across the energy spectrum and across technologies, and produced water is definitely, if not the highest, one of the highest focuses on our list. So, across the Permian, right, adoption of produced water treatment is still emerging. We know that the technology works, and I think that's largely what we've come to the shared conclusion here already today. So it's not, it's really not a technical challenge for the most part, but it's things like cost, energy use, which drives cost, and integration and standardization right across projects. And so that becomes very clear when we look at injection capacity. So this is just looking at an example in the Delaware. So, this is really the hard constraint. In a business as usual case, the Delaware, it looks like, depending on who you talk to, this is data from B3 Insight, but injection capacity limited within, a short 5 years from now, maybe even 4. And even with aggressive mitigation, even with aggressive treatment, let's say we can treat or shift disposal of up to, say, 2.5 million gallons per day, you're buying time. In this case, maybe a couple, 3 years. And so, we've come to the conclusion that, partial recovery is really not the solution. It's a very important part of the solution. And, everyone here, keep working on that. I'm not trying to belittle anyone's efforts in this space, but what we're focused on then is, how do we manage the remaining water and the concentrate stream? And that's where our Produced Water and Brine Management Pilot Hub, or PPWBMPH, comes in. I'm still working on the name. I know it's not as good as the Bingendorf, right? But we're working on it. So we have a 320-acre field testing site out in extreme West Texas. It's right on the border with New Mexico. Sort of northeast of Lovington, New Mexico, near the town of Plains, Texas. And we're co-located with an oil and gas partner who's doing a CO2 enhanced oil recovery project. And we're focusing on that site on technologies that are, characterizing what happens to the rest, to that concentrate stream. So looking at piloting technologies that design for solids handling, right? Design for management or conversion of the concentrate into other, useful byproducts. Things like, say, acids and bases, or things like critical mineral recovery, right? Basically, it is our belief that while treatment is necessary, primary treatment and recovery, in order to facilitate that, we really need to valorize that brine and generate revenue in order to support the deployment of that upstream treatment. And so initially, the site will support about 4 to 6 pilots in this space in phase 1. We're kicking that off kind of Q2 of this year. But the idea is that we validate the technologies at the pilot scale so that at phase 2, those technologies that are the most promising to scale up can actually do so on site in step with the growth of our oil and gas partners' EOR operations. So if you're working in this space, and even if you're not working on brine valorization or critical mineral or some of the stuff we're just talking about, love to talk to you about potentially piloting out at our site. So thank you.
yours. Just arrows right there. And
Thank you.
make sure that.
See, is it high enough?
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Zach, and thank you to the consortium. My name is Greg Remy. I'm with Sigma Advanced Technologies, and this is what we do. We treat produced water using our ozone process to make basically a clean brine. It's a flow-through process. We've been operating since 2021 in the Permian. We've treated over 100 million barrels at this point and ticking every day. Using ozone that's generated from the air that is all around us. And ozone is a great oxidant, more powerful than bleach. And we get higher output than like ClO2. So we target organics, TSS, the iron, methanol. These trailers and these units are ones that we produce. We produce a 53-foot trailer and a 45-foot container that's seaworthy that can go everywhere. Each one can treat between 20,000 and 100,000 barrels a day. With 24/7 remote operation. So what is ozone? So ozone is made from the oxygen in our air. So we're collecting it with a compressor, kicking out the nitrogen, applying some power with electrodes to make ozone, which is 3 oxygen atoms. So it's unstable. You get atomic oxygen. It's a very powerful oxidant. You can see we mix it in our water, blend it. So there's no chemical storage or handling that we've seen just in our little microcosm, some accidents there. And at the end of the day, we get a higher quality water than with peroxide or bleach or whatnot. This is one of our units out in the field. So in the Permian Basin, as we all know, over 7.3 billion barrels annually of produced water. We've heard execs say various things such as we are water oil companies or water companies skimming oil in various ways. They said that. Here is one of our units operating. This is an aerial view. So you can see that is the unit right there. We are treating these frac ponds. Each one, I think, is about 700,000 barrels, and you can see the color difference on the middle one. The middle one is the one we're just finishing to treat, and then we get to the other ones. So that's the scale of what we typically do out here in the oil field. And again, this is a clean brine, so then it can be reused for fracking, or it can go then to the next step in the train if you want a higher quality water. We have been growing, so we've been growing into additional regions, additional markets. We've been growing our field service capabilities, so we can do field water analysis. We have more field technicians out there, and we are building more units as we speak. So that is about it for me. If you have any questions about ozone, Bob is here with me. You get, we're the 2 guys running Sigma, and we love to talk about ozone. So if you have any questions or any applications or anything, please feel free to come talk to us at any time. Thank you.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Greg. And sorry, we're going to have to move to the handheld mic here, David. So I'm going to do this pass off for you in a sec. But quick introduction. Next, we're going to hear from David Sheh. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. Senior Director of Development at Capture 6. David has degrees from UC Berkeley and MBA from Quantic School of Business and Technology. Capture 6 is focused on commercializing waste brine and valorizing this, and they sit at the intersection of brine valorization and direct air capture and carbon sequestration. So I'll leave it right there for you, pass this off, and looking forward to your talk.
Thank you, Zach. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm David. I'm with Capture 6. And what Capture 6 does is we are essentially converting waste into value. So we turn salt water into multiple forms of economic and environmental value. So I think we're all familiar with the problem of saltwater disposal. Even if you have the capacity to somehow dispose of it and the transportation to get it there, it's still a costly endeavor at the end of the day. And so no matter how it is that you're disposing, it's ultimately represents some form of cost. And of course, it varies, again, depending on location. But ultimately, what Capture 6 is endeavoring to do is that we are essentially converting salt into value. So we know that for most produced water, for most forms of brine, that salt, sodium chloride, represents about 70% or so of the overall stream. So what we end up doing with that is we turn that into a solvent that we can use to pull CO2 out of the atmosphere. And by doing that, we're reducing CO2 and converting that into the form of carbonates, so it's mineralized. And the carbonates could be utilized or they could be stored away permanently. And both of those are still eligible for economic 45Q tax credits. And ultimately, these carbonates can also be sequestered without the use of class 6 wells. So I think many of us are familiar with expense for the design, engineering, and construction of class 6 wells. And given the permitting status, whether with the EPA or if your state has primacy of that, can take a significant amount of time. This represents a pathway to get to carbon storage and sequestration as soon as possible. And of course, in most cases, we're also recovering fresh water and we're producing other forms of chemicals that can be utilized on site. So we have a pipeline of projects all over the world, but within the next 6 months, we'll have a couple projects coming online. So I wanted to quickly talk a little bit about that. The first one is in Western Australia, and this is in collaboration with a green ammonia and hydrogen production facility. And we're taking the produce water that's coming out of their carbon storage facility where they don't have any place to put that produced water. So we're treating that, using that for our own carbon capture and storage, and essentially providing them with fresh water in return to generate their green ammonia and hydrogen. A little bit closer to home is our collaboration with Palmdale Water District in Southern California, where, as you know, there are water scarcity issues. And here, Palmdale Water District is essentially doing advanced treatment of their wastewater so that they can extract additional water for reuse. What we're doing is we're essentially, again, taking that waste brine from their RO treatment and turning that into carbon capture and returning additional water for them so that they're recovering additional, just even more water than they originally planned. And originally they had planned on constructing brine evaporation ponds, which is a CapEx saver because then they don't need to be doing that anymore. So I'll close this with a relatively bold statement, which is that, innovation without some kind of application isn't really all that useful to us. And with Capture 6, we are essentially turning cost into opportunity and converting waste into value. And so if you're interested in having any additional conversations or dialogue about that, then I welcome you to please connect with me. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you, David. Yeah, I just want to kind of connect some some points here. Roland, come on down. That, every time we have a meeting, I beat the drum on brine valorization, so I'm going to do it again. But, thinking about Derek's presentation, you're not going to be able to dispose of everything forever. Where else can we eke out value? I think the brine is one of those places. Bipolar membrane electrodialysis is able to help valorize sodium chloride into acids and bases. And I know Dr. Sheh is exploring this right now in the lab. And we've got industrial partners next door in El Paso that are doing this at a much larger scale or about to be. But the trick there is the influence specs to bipolar ED are very low, single-digit milligram per liter on hardness and silica. And how do you get out hardness and silica from water? You need to do chemical precipitation. And to get it really, really far down, you need things like soda ash, which is what David's company produces. And they can do that in situ. So yeah, just want people to keep that in the back of their mind. And so again, I'll shut up and I'm going to hand off the mic to Roland George, who is with Membrion. Here's the mic. I'm sorry. Appreciate it.
Hi, y'all. My name is Roland George, and I am with Membrion. I'm based out of Fort Worth, Texas. Membrion as a whole is based out of Seattle, Washington. I'll be discussing today a little bit about our electroceramic desalination technology and kind of how it plays in the fields we're looking at out here. So on the fly, Membrion was founded in 2016. As a company, we are really focused on approaching streams that are really high in TDS. We operate at a low pressure while providing a high water recovery, anywhere from 70 to 98%, depending upon the stream that we're working with. And unlike pretty much any other membrane out there, we are made out of a durable ceramic polymer. So if you take that little kind of the beef jerky silica packet that you get in food, or like a food freshness preserver, that sol gel material is the material that we're going to be using to put together our membranes. So at a glance, here is our membrane and module. We operate in a very similar format to traditional EDR, if you are familiar. So we will take our module and our membrane, we will apply a positive and negative charge to the anode and cathode on the end, And instead of pulling the water directly through it using pressure and separating using physical force, we use electrochemistry to pull total dissolved solids out of our water, clean concentrate stream with the ions on one side, and then separate stream with your reusable or recirculable water on the other end. So like I said, if it has a charge, we can treat it. We like to use it. We like to play with it. Small footprint, we can fit in, whether it be in retrofit or greenfield capacity. We provide wastewater as a service, so we can offer our treatment at a gallons per treated model or a capital model, depending on what works best for your need or your budget constraints. And otherwise, we are flexible and we can operate on a fairly, rangy basis of tolerances, materials, inputs, feed waters, elsewise. So you can have 100,000 TDS coming in for one stream, and you can put 150,000 in it next. We're able to figure out kind of based upon the treatment targets that you're looking for, how we are able to get there without necessarily having to cause a pause or a stop in your operations. So here we have an example of the same process view that I showed you earlier. It's the brine and product water coming out of one side and a great kind of single shot here of our module membrane. This is our INX 1000 model, so that's going to be our smaller flow rate model, whereas our INX 2000 is nearing completion in the development stages right now. Here is one of our operating units. So we are looking ahead through using electrochemistry to go through our desalination process. We can handle this process with oxidizing components, typically scaling components, typically just takes a little bit of forefront on the front end before we put the water through it to make sure that we're not scaling. And all this being said, we still recover 90% of the water while concentrating your ions into a separate stream. This is one of my favorite graphics I like to show. It's kind of applicable whether we're in the oil and gas produced water industry, the semiconductor industry, food and bev industry, elsewise. Production is always changing. Water qualities are pretty consistently shifting aspect of what all we're doing. So flexibility isn't really an option in a lot of cases. A shutdown is going to cause more problems than it's solving. So having the ability to pivot and adjust, whether it be to feed water chemistry, discharge limits changing, new regulations going in place, without necessarily having to do a full capital install, full change to your desalination mass removal step. Market served, obviously we're here for produced water, so none of these are really important outside of the produced water side, but we do focus heavily on the concentrated brine MLD, ZLD side of things. Outside of the oil and gas produced water industry, we are working fairly consistently with some RO brine, RO reject style streams and getting those loops, closing those loops up to about 98% recovery off of the reject. So you're getting to a full loop that's being closed instead of losing water that could be being used in your process. Quick overview of the applications that I'm going to show a little bit of data on today. We have operation in hydraulic fracking, heavy metal removal in petrochemical operations, some cooling tower blowdown, because that's a fairly applicable one across most industry, and then just a little bit of monoethylene glycol recovery, so being able to reuse that monoethylene glycol after a pass through our system in your processes and pulling any of the metals, minerals, dissolved salts out of that. First example with fracking, hydraulic fracking, we saw 97%, 91% recoveries across the board there, able to be reused, reinjected through the process. Otherwise, moving on to heavy metals removal, this was a project that is based down in Mexico in a water scarce region. We are essentially taking the wastewater off of their production line, off of their metal rinse, and fully recirculating it, allowing them to access ZLD. So they're having a minimal, if no pull from the municipal sewers. Cooling tower blowdown, another one where we saw a fairly large savings in water for the end user. It's about a 73% savings overall from their initial operations by adding on the ECD step in their waste management and their water management. And lastly, the monoethylene glycol reclamation application that I had mentioned. This is one where we were essentially treating the MEG, removing the salts from the MEG stream, and then the end user was retaking that MEG and reusing it after we removed the solids from it. And I believe this is my second to last example here. So this is our semiconductor example. This is actually the system that we have on the ground out there. This is with one of our investors, Lam Research. This is one that we're essentially taking the mixed metal stream that comes off of the semiconductor bath and getting them up to about a 95% conductivity reduction. So as a whole, this is really helping them eliminate trucking, eliminate any need to deal with RCRA materials on site, or trucking them off site, apologies. And as a whole, this did help them increase their throughput about 3 times for any of the water that they were processing, treating, because we were able to pull so much of the dissolved solids, metals out of there prior to it hitting their other treatment solutions. And last application, this is one that we are currently in the process of final vetting, final sizing for. This is a mining application that's targeting phosphate removals and water recoveries. We got a nice graphic here kind of showing the initial water, the concentrate that we spit out, and the effluent that is our treated clean water. As a whole, the goal was to recover 70% of the water and kind of potentially enable some critical minerals recovery with the phosphorus, knowing that we're headed towards the kind of turbulent period with that specific material at times. So we went in there, we recovered 75% of the water, and we were able to enable this group and then the previous group to enable their metal and mineral recovery following our ECD step. So brief final closing point, we are chemistry adaptable, flow adaptable. We're able to operate as needed, on or off. We can operate in a series or parallel setup to increase flow rates that pass through. And then we are oxidizer resistant and organic fouling resistant. If there is anything that I could leave with you, it's that we are able to go where other membranes traditionally can't go. So anything polymeric that has issues with handling TDS, letting that TDS flow through it, across it, whatever else, we can do it. We can handle it. We look forward to breaking down and performing as much mass reduction, TDS mass reduction, as we possibly can, and letting you have as much water as you can.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Roland. All right. Last but certainly not least, we're going to hear from Dr. Brendan Hathaway, who's the Director of Engineering at Sunvapor, where he leads the engineering and commissioning of pilot and commercial systems aimed at decarbonizing industrial processes. So Dr. Hathaway has earned his PhD in mechanical engineering from the University of Minnesota, specializing in solar thermochemical processes and high temperature reactor development. Wow, what a mouthful. At Sunvapor, he has played a key role in deploying 3 solar steam facilities, including steam-driven desalination processes he'll be talking about today. So, floor is yours.
Thanks, Zach. So, as you mentioned, working at Sunvapor, we're a renewable energy-related company that's trying to solve industrial problems, decarbonize processes that are within the realm of the food, energy, water nexus. And today we're going to be talking about our work in the water portion of this, specifically talking about our pilot plant that is in operation in the Carlsbad area, specifically near Loving. It's our hybrid oil field water desalination installation, or HOWDY. And so you can see here an example of the water we take in. We're using produced water that comes from an initial coarse filtering system that has a concentration about 130,000 ppm TDS, and we're bringing it up to a concentration just shy of 250,000 right now. We hope to bring that up to around 260,000 to get to about 50% recovery. This plant was built over the course of last several months and was commissioned in December. And so what you see up there is towards the end of construction. And we've been operating the facility now this month, and actually just got done running steady state for a while through this last week. And so we've got some samples actually on ice in the car that we're hoping to show off. And so the facility itself is shown here. It consists of a set of solar thermal energy collectors that are providing heat input to a steam accumulator that provides some thermal energy storage. So we're able to run after sunset into the evening. And we've got a hybrid process where the thermal energy is used through cascading through an evaporator, the tall unit you see there, down into a membrane distillation system. And the brine itself then moves upwards in concentration through those processes, so we can take advantage of the effectiveness of running the heat through a high and low temperature process. So far, we've been able to get to our target concentration levels and produce the distillate that is able to stay below 400 ppm in terms of its TDS values. And we're going to have a whole lot of analysis run on it going forward here with these samples that we brought to see how we're doing in all the other aspects. But we expect pretty good performance has been achieved with these thermal processes. So now, in addition to the pilot and the work there developing the process, we're also digging into what the community is interested in. We're having listening sessions, such as the one shown here that was hosted by the SEMIA project, where we listen to what the community's concerns are around produced water reuse. Heard a lot about their concerns about having clean air, clean water, and safe jobs that they can work at. And we're hoping to use our pilot and the systems that we're going to develop from our knowledge to try to address these issues. So we're providing a renewable pathway to get towards that clean water that can be reused by the community. And at the same time, we're trying to create jobs here. And we're partnering with Southeast New Mexico College, actually, to use our pilot facility as a site for training people on working on some of these types of technologies that are used for produced water treatment, expecting that this will be a growing market in the future. So in addition to what's mentioned there, we're partnered with several other team members that we want to mention as well that are a part of our project. So the University of New Mexico is working with us for analysis on membrane technologies, providing insight on ways to maintain membrane health and maximize performance and analyze issues. New Mexico State University has been providing water analysis, and of course the consortium has been helpful through many aspects of the development of this project. Southeast New Mexico College, as I mentioned, for providing assistance for maintenance and providing the opportunity to do on-the-site job training. NGL Energy Partners for providing the site and the water that we're actually treating. A grant from the Economic Development Department of New Mexico. And we're also part of the U.S. Department of Energy's Solar Desalination Prize. We're currently finalists, and when we keep the system running long enough and we get the right data, we're hoping to be winners of that prize as well. So with that, here's our contact information if you want to know more about this project, and want to work with us with any upcoming ones, or if you think you might be able to help us as we work.
Very impressive. Thank you, Brandon. And that rounds out our flash talk. So can we do one more round for all of our presenters?